You are listening to Visionaries Wrestling Network, providing your perfect podcast experience.
Okay, this is the MGB review of the third Nova Pro event, Z3, Last Exit to Springfield, which was in March 2016. Now, we did one of these, Mason, Spring Break in 2018. We then did one in January 2019. Today recording, it's July 31st. They're certainly not the most frequent of things, but we did want to go back and watch the original events and recording them. One of the reasons we're doing this today is we know there's going to be a period of 2 weeks when you're in Ohio. And when you get back, actually, we'd only have like 1 day to record an episode as well. So we're recording things a little ahead of time. So I'm not quite sure when this is going to come out. It might be we don't even need it, and we'll save it for a future week when we might actually record. But as of right now, like I said, it's the end of July, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, match one. Beau Crockett and Innocent Isaiah against Ethan Alexander Sharpe and Rayo. And actually, Brandon Money Green was actually accompanying that second tag team that we talked about. Now, in the previous event, Z2 Stay Vicious, Rayo, Brandon Green, and Prakash Sabar were against Dan O'Hare, George Gatton, and Jeff Cannonball. Actually, they defeated them. And Beau Crockett and Innocent Isaiah lost to the Bravado brothers, which is Harlem Bravado, and Lancelot Bravado. Ethan Alexander Sharpe's Twitter bio says he's the sharpest and richest person in wrestler, the Corruptor, RGL and Tag Team Champion, and the Cybernetico winner. Now, I think the Cybernetico, we had that tournament before. I think that's the one that's in Chicago specifically. Master of Plans and Wrestling. Also, from the Ring of Honor website, Rayo, the self-proclaimed last Incan warrior, started his training at the MCW Training Center in 2015. The last Incan warrior attended 3 Ring of Honor seminar tryouts before he was able to earn a spot in Future of Honor. So we saw Rayo at MCW, and I think we saw him on an NXT event as well. But it sounds like he's actually part of Ring of Honor. And I don't think we've really talked about Rayo at all. So I did a little bit more research once I saw those things here. It says Rayo pays tribute to the Incas by wearing an ancient shield that belonged to the late Incan Emperor Atahualpa. In addition, his war paint represents the prophecy of Viracocha, a tale about the rise of the Incas. Now, having started to research it, I had more questions than answers, because there was 2 names there I had not heard of. Atahualpa, also known as Atahualpa, was the last ruler of the Incan Empire who reigned from 1532 until his capture by execution by the invading Spanish forces led by Pizarro in 1533. And Viracocha was the supreme god of the Incas. He is also known by 3 other names I'm going to struggle to pronounce. Considered the creator god, he was the father of all the Inca gods, and it was he who formed the earth, heavens, sun, moon, and all the living beings. So there's a lot to Rayo's character there. I think we knew that he was from Peru, I want to say. But I certainly didn't know that he had lots of tributes to his heritage with part of his act. All right, go ahead, Mason. Tell us about this one.
So they're making Rayo like push down the ropes for everybody, get the microphone, and they're really using Rayo. Mm-hmm. And Isaiah and Beau's name is Cutie and the Beast. Mm-hmm. And Money and Sharpe, they yell at Rayo for shaking Isaiah's hand.
Because he's on the other team.
Yeah. So that's a little mean, but
perhaps they're heels.
So Money Green interferes and Rayo's not happy, but Isaiah wins with throwing Rayo up and landing hard on like a belly flop onto the mat. Mm-hmm. And Isaiah then smacks Beau's butt after the match.
Okay, now, I actually found that match that I was talking about when he was on NXT. He was against the Forgotten Sons, and he was actually tagging with Corey Kirsch and Vinnie Mixon. He was actually under the name Cesar Rise on that one, so it wasn't under the character Rayo. You actually said after this first one, you didn't recognize anybody in the crowd at all as they were scanning around, and I pretty much agreed with that. I think we recognized a couple of faces, but most of the faces, you were like, yeah, I don't know who that is. So it's kind of interesting in between all those different events. We started going September 2017, so March 2016, we're only looking like a year and a bit, but yeah, there was certainly a lot of changes within that time. Match 2, Bobby Shields and John Kermon. In the previous events, Bobby Shields defeated Brandon Day, and actually this was John Kermon, as far as I can tell, this was his Nova Pro debut. Now, at the time of recording, I should also say, a week ago, after we watched this match, I went back, of course, I look at the names, see if anything's relevant to what's going on, and I saw on John Kermon's Twitter account, somebody posted something about, I would much rather have a conversation with a 5-year-old than an adult. And John Kermon, I think, retweeted or replied to this saying, 1,000 times more. So I responded, seems we have our own 5-year-old in the house, sounds like MGB should do a special interview with John Kermon in the next 7 months, obviously before he turns 6. And John Kermon responded, I'm down with that. So, I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but in theory, Jackson's going to interview John Kermon. And we did actually ask him a couple of his questions ahead of time. We're not going to spoil them right now. 2 of them were perfectly sensible ones, which were great for actually asking John Kermon. And the third one was way, way out there, which is pretty typical for Jackson. I was just surprised he didn't ask him about smelling. Does he like the smell of trash? But no, this one was actually wrestling related, but it was way, way out there. Unfortunately, I already know what that question is. I wish it had been live because I was just laughing this morning. I was like, oh my gosh. So hopefully that'll come out true. All right, talk to us about this match then.
So, Kermon, he doesn't have shoes, but he has shin guards that look like shoes.
Well, you thought so.
Yeah.
I said straight away he's not wearing shoes, but he was wearing those things. But you can pull your face as much as you like.
You said those are shoes, and I was the one that found out those were shin guards.
No, that was the other way around. Your memory is terrible.
No.
Because you weren't buying it, because you weren't looking, because you were writing notes down. Because I didn't have to write the notes, because I do my research afterwards, but... Come on, tell us about the match.
It's sort of weird that Bobby's a face.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby does an octopus stretch while slamming Bobby, John Kermon.
Joan Kermon?
John.
Oh, I thought you said Joan. That's it?
No.
Okay.
So Bobby Shields win with a gory bomb.
Okay, what's a glory bomb?
A gory.
Oh, sorry, what's a gory bomb?
The commentator said it, not me.
So you don't remember then? I don't recognize that phrase.
What?
That's why
You even said that you couldn't really remember because we watched it like 2 weeks ago.
Well, I didn't write notes on it. You write it down as it happens, so you could write down exactly what happened. This is partly on you. All right, I've got after this. Bobby tweeted recently about Revolutionary Rumble at Primal Conflict on Saturday, September 7th. Animal from Road Warriors is on the promotional picture, and Logan, Easton, Laroux will be there as well. Sounds kind of interesting. I think Primal Conflict's the one that's close to us in West Virginia. So that might be something that we'll take a look at depending on how busy we are that weekend. All right, we're actually doing... we originally used to review the Nova Pro events,
right.
And we went back and started, because we missed a lot of them. We were like, we're going to go back and watch the original ones, and it's been very infrequent. We watched the first event, then like 8 months later we watched the second event, and then literally we just watched the third event.
Okay.
And as luck would have it, as far as I can tell, that was your debut event against Bobby Shields.
For Nova, yeah.
So, is there anything you can remember about that event particularly?
I remember really a lot of things. It was the first event in Northern Virginia in a long time. And it was a good crowd. Like, there were a lot of people there and they were very loud. And really, the biggest thing, I just didn't know if that was going to happen, mostly because wrestling hadn't been here in a very long time, almost 10 years. So given that kind of layoff, you just never know if people are going to show up again. But it was definitely very, very good. There were a lot of people there. They were all very into it. It was awesome.
Was that shin guard you were wearing?
Yeah, I used to wear shin guards. I didn't want to have to keep remembering them and putting them in my bag, so I stopped wearing them. I'm going to give you the honest truth, you know what I mean?
No, I thought of one more thing while I was actually watching your match, which I never thought about. Like, I knew the answer, like, why do you not wear shoes?
Right.
I knew that part.
Yeah.
Now, the thing I hadn't thought about, though, is, and I only realized it because of Desmond King wearing his gloves. How come you don't wear the MMA gloves, though?
That part... It's kind of hard to do stuff with those on.
Oh, okay.
So, like, when I'm in there wrestling around with guys and doing holds and things, it's actually easier to get the holds and stuff when I don't have those gloves on. Even when I fight, it's actually harder to do a lot of the submissions with them on. They're kind of in the way and they're big and bulky. They make my hands basically like 2 to 3 times their normal size.
Okay.
Yeah, so it gets hard, especially when you're used to, like, sneaking your hands in places.
That's fine.
Save that for a soundbite.
I never thought about it before.
But
But then I suddenly thought, when I saw his gloves, and I'm like, well, Brock Lesnar wears gloves
Right.
as well. And I was like, John's not wearing gloves.
Yeah.
And I'd never made that connection before. So
Brock does a lot of punching and stuff, too. I do more grappling.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, makes a little bit of a difference, too.
Hey, Match 3. Amanda Rodriguez defeats Maria Manic. Both women are making their debut, so I got nothing to add to this one about that. We think this is the first women's match.
Mm-hmm.
And because I asked, I was like, is that right? And then you mentioned there was one other match. Do you remember what you said?
Oh, yeah. So, in the first ever one, there was one woman that it was an intergender match.
It was, against...
A man?
Yeah, okay, Innocent Isaiah. So I went back and looked what that is. We know the person who was in that match.
We do?
Yeah, it was Casey Carlisle.
Oh.
The UCW Women's Champion.
Oh.
Remember how we tried to figure it out? And obviously we didn't have that connection. That's why we recognised Casey Carlisle, because we're like, she kind of looks familiar. That's why we knew her. She was the first. No, but we only saw that event, like I said, a long time ago now. This was like Spring Break 2018. So yeah, it was Casey Carlisle. And... as she came out, we did notice they spelled Amanda Rodriguez's name wrong. I noticed they did that on the second one. Whoever does the captions for these ones, they're a little careless on how they do different things. And we've actually seen Amanda Rodriguez before as well. Because we both said we've never seen Amanda Rodriguez. We have seen Amanda Rodriguez. She fought against Casey Dillon in Nova Pro 37 in a row. It was a dark match, which means it was like on the pre-show. It was at the Allendale Volunteer Fire Department. What made this particularly interesting for me was I actually just ordered a shirt from Casey Dillon. I actually talked about Casey Dillon on my open agenda item in Good Cop, Bad Cop, episode 50. So it was funny how all these names sort of come together and everything starts to piece together. But I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, Mason, go ahead.
So Amanda, she won't let the ref check her boots, but...
Oh, gosh. I did not think that's what you were going to say for a minute. I was very concerned. Oh, okay, go ahead. Keep going. I thought we nearly had a non-PG moment for a minute. I was going to say she would be quite within her rights to not let him check that. Alright, once Mason composes himself, we'll continue.
I know what you're talking. So, and a fan wants Amanda's high five, but she's like, she puts her arms down, like, why would I want to high five you? And then he just does a low five.
So he's still got a fist bump, essentially.
Yeah. So, the commentator nicknames Amanda A-Rod.
That makes sense.
And Amanda wins with a roll-up.
Now, I also got from this, Maria Manic's from Richmond, and she was described as a rookie in the commentary. So I didn't know that she was a rookie, which if that's true, because I actually knew who Maria Manic was before this match, and you didn't. And so I was a little surprised about it. I didn't know she was from Richmond. That certainly surprised me. I actually thought she was from New Jersey, so I must have been mixing something up. And also in the match, Amanda called a timeout, but Maria just chased after her, because you said something like, how come Beau Crockett calls times out? Did you say Beau?
Yeah, Beau.
But yeah, he gets one and Amanda doesn't. Well, probably because it's not legitimate. You're not allowed to call a timeout in a match. After the match, I actually said to you, do you want to watch a documentary? So this is what you were trying to talk about. This was the Kenny Johnson documentary, and I'd seen this probably a few months beforehand. So it was actually released on May 2nd, 2019, and it actually showed you the difference in her character. So I knew Maria Manic as basically a deathmatch fighter. So watching her in this was like really weird because she wasn't that character at all. For you, you had the totally opposite experience. You saw her as a, quote, traditional wrestler. And then you watched this documentary and suddenly she was a big deathmatch fighter. Do you want to talk about what you took from the documentary then?
So her parents don't really like her fighting and doing that stuff. And they were divorced, but she fights Matt Tremont.
Yeah.
In
I think there was a couple.
H2O wrestling, and she fights a lot of death matches. And
that's basically all she does. Well, not all she does, but that's like her main thing right now. She's really into those. She's changed her image, like she dyed her hair. She got tattoos. She basically changed. She was like a Barbie doll figure before, and now she's like a really tough, kick-ass woman, I guess.
Yeah, she had man-eater tattooed on her.
Yep.
And the first time she tried to take a bump, she got a concussion.
She did. That was during training, yeah. Because she literally had no idea what to do. But she knew that it was something she wanted to continue to do. And I made sure, because I was going to let you watch the documentary first, and I was like, oh, no. Watch the match first. And I think that was the better way around to do it, because I thought that was more interesting. Now, normally at the start of matches, I'll talk about what's on Twitter. I couldn't talk about anything on Twitter for Maria, and the reason is she's banned from Twitter for life.
Why?
She threatened to eat a fan. So she was actually being investigated by the police for cannibalism. Now, clearly, this is why you got to be careful when you go to school, and we talk about things like, hey, don't make threats even in joke, like, hey, I'm going to kill you. Obviously, you don't mean you're literally going to kill people. You got to be very careful with things like that. She threatened that she was going to eat a fan, and now she's banned from Twitter for life because she made a threat. She was also being investigated by the police for possible cannibalism. You know what cannibalism, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the same thing. So you got to be very careful with what you say and what you put out on social media because it will be taken very seriously. So it's something you got to be careful of. Now, I've written down on here, I'd actually seen Maria Manic again, and I'd forgotten about it. It was actually on the $1 million Intergender Battle Royal that I talked about before. The one that Ali Cat won in WrestleMania weekend. She was actually featured in that one. Yeah, Maria Manic was in there. It looked like she got about halfway through. And I honestly didn't remember that at all. I also saw, and I'd forgotten this one as well, Maria Manic and Penelope Ford defeated the Platinum Honeys as well. At, I might get it right this time, Uncharted Territory. Yes. Fine, I didn't say the name of the Star Trek film. Episode 2. I know I definitely saw that one as well. And actually, since I've not seen anything since that, there is fairly recent news, Mason. June 28th. 2019, Fightful.com. Maria Manic makes her Ring of Honor debut. And he actually said on the interview, at tonight, Ring of Honor's Best in the World event, Man-Eater, Maria Manic makes her debut in the promotion. So it just shows you the rise that she's had. She has those big matches at H2O, CZW as well, I think she's also at as well, and Ring of Honor as well. So she's definitely an interesting character.
Can we please review H2O?
I don't have H2O.
What about CZW?
I have CZW.
Can we review that now?
Okay, so while I was researching this, and I actually did look at some CZW things, I was looking at like the top 10 best death matches ever or something, and there's one from 2008 that actually features Nick Gage, a very young Nick Gage, and lots of other ones. Also features John Moxley. So I might have to watch it first, but it might not be appropriate for you. And the thing that was interesting on the 2-minute clip that I did watch, it's like all outside, everybody's stood up, but it looks kind of interesting. But I might have to watch one first, but we'll have to see on that one. And I'll talk about more about that later, because there's a good reason why I don't want to talk about it now, okay? Match 4, Dan O'Hare and Jeff Cannonball against Jimmy Parker and Mark James. Dan O'Hare, George Gatton, and Jeff Cannonball defeated Brandon Green, Prakash Sabar, and Rayo. And Jimmy and Mark, as far as I can tell, are making their Nova Pro debut. Alright, go ahead, Mason.
So, Jimmy would yell 3, and the crowd would yell 2, because he, pinned him for a 3 count, but it was 2. And O'Hare and Cannonball win with a
Death Valley Driver?
No. With a deposition, whatever. Oh, no. Isn't that that's
There's no way they won with a deposition.
I know what that is. It's just
not a wrestling move.
Yes. Isn't that like part of the cycle, like the water cycle? But no. It was a decapitation.
He didn't win with a decapitation. Do you know what a decapitation is?
No.
That's when they take your head off. That's when they cut your head off.
I know, but it was a decapitation.
Alright, this stresses the emphasis. When you go back to school in pretty soon, that you need to make sure you're writing notes carefully so you can actually read them. He definitely didn't lose by a deposition, and he definitely did lose by a decapitation, but I don't remember which one it is. Alright, Matt Tremont on Twitter, 28th of July 2018. My final match in CZW End will be all Be All Deathmatch versus Dan O'Hare. So Dan O'Hare actually wrestles in death matches as well. So there's kind of a theme in this one. The most violent and bloody match I've had in 2018 and the most violent match in At Combat Zone this year is what he tweeted after that match. So obviously Dan O'Hare's into some pretty gruesome matches as well. Jimmy Parker, I found out, was a second generation professional wrestler. He says, I have been trained by my father, Les Parker, former NWA talent Ken Spence. And Jimmy Parker and Mark James were known as the Brutes. Unfortunately, their last post on Twitter, 28. So I can't really add much.
I mean, which would more sound like a wrestling move? A deposition or decapitation?
Decapitation. But it wasn't a decapitation. I don't care what you wrote down. It wasn't a decapitation. If you thought that move was called a decapitation, unless that's like a Kevin Ford name for a move or something, I don't know.
That's what he named it.
Okay, I don't know. Match 5, Arik Royal and Tim Donst. Arik Royal defeated Frankie Pickard last time out, and Tim Donst wasn't in the second event for some reason, but he faced Sonjay, Dutt and Logan, Easton, Laroux in the main event for the first Nova Pro event. Alright, Mason, go ahead.
Tim Donst's shoe was untied.
It was, and I knew that it was way too early for safety first, because that's actually how safety first came around, because the crowd were like, that's not safe or something, and he tied his shoelace, and that's where the whole character spawned from. But I knew that was way later than that.
So, Arik's submission looks painful, and the commentator called a Space Jam. So I'm not the only one. That's happened like 2 times already in the first 3 episodes.
Okay, alright, I'm not saying that's not true. You said that he does a face jam because he likes Space Jam.
He does!
That's not the reason he does a face jam, though. He just happens to like 2 things that rhyme. You said that I wonder if he likes Space Jam because he does a face jam. So you thought he liked 2 things that rhyme. So that's not I'm not arguing with that.
In my defense, you said he likes duplexes because he does suplexes.
Well, I was trying to show you how silly your argument was. That was me being sarcastic and putting forward a similar reasoning. You said you thought he'd like Space Jam because he does face jams. That was the point. I wonder if he likes duplexes then because he does suplexes. I don't think he likes duplexes. I was just showing you how stupid your argument was.
He must like beer because he does a spear.
There you go. Could be. Or he might like fear. Or he could like tears. Or he could like anything. There's like a whole host of things. It doesn't make any sense, Mason, but you kept going with it, so I was like, sure.
He likes peers.
Perhaps he likes Rias as well. I don't know. I'm talking about the bird right now.
I don't know what that is.
It's like an emu or an emu. We went to the zoo recently and the zookeeper called it an emu. I'm sure it's an emu. I don't know why people say emu, unless it's the same reason some people say coyotes instead of coyotes. It's just an alternative pronunciation that sounds dumb as far as I'm concerned. Alright, anything else for this match besides this shoe?
Arik wins with a roll-up.
Oh my gosh.
I already talked about other stuff.
Alright, fair enough. And at the end of the match, he offered him a hug, and he just slapped it away. He gave him a handshake, and then actually he did get a hug, and it was like, oh, isn't this a nice thing? So it ended on a good moment in the end.
Oh, I remember why I missed some of it. Because Jackson, he came back from swim lessons, and he finished a whole level in a half a day.
Mm-hmm.
That was like 4 objectives in like less than a half an hour.
Okay.
That's why I missed some.
Sure.
No,
it's funny, I got bits down and I haven't managed to do it. Match 6, the CWF Mid-Atlantic Television title was a 4-way match between Smith Garrett, the champion, Frankie Pickard, Joe Keys, and Ken Dixon. CWF Mid-Atlantic title match previously, Smith Garrett defeated Timmy Lou Retton, Arik Royal defeated Frankie Pickard, and Joe Keys and Ken Dixon, as far as I can tell, are making their Nova Pro debut. They spelled Joe Keys wrong on the caption as well, so another second time for the thing. And I noticed Smith Garrett took forever to come through the curtain. They played his music, and it was an 80s song. And then finally it got to the chorus like a minute later, and it's like, let's hear it for the boy. And then at that point he walked into it. So I don't know if he deliberately timed to come in at that point in the song, but it was painful. There were some other ones where like, man, there's a long gap between. But this one was like the longest one of all, I would say. Actually, I think if I'm right, I think we saw Joe Keys and we saw Ken Dixon at the VCW Liberty Lottery at the end of July as well. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so in Nova Pro's defense, you spell Oscar O-S-K-A too.
No, I know how to spell Oscar, but it's easier when you look at it in your brain to read the word Oscar O-S-C-A-R and say Oscar than it is to read it as A-S-U-K-A. I can spell Oscar just fine. When your brain looks at that, it doesn't immediately see Oscar, it sees like Asuka. So to make sure I don't goof quickly when I'm reading, I just spell it differently.
Oh,
I know perfectly well.
So that's why Matt says Asuka.
I don't. That's a British thing. It's not just Matt that does that.
Oh.
Darren Kirkby does that as well. There's a few people. Yeah, I don't like that at all. I think she knows how to pronounce her own name, or you would assume so. But anyway.
And I spelled Rodriguez Rodrigese.
Wrong.
I know it has a Q in it, but I just...
It ends in a Z as well.
Rodriguez.
Perhaps it was you that was writing these captions.
Rodriguez.
Perhaps it was 3-year-old Mason writing them. That might be why there's a few spelling mistakes. Alright, talk about the match though.
Okay, so everybody's teaming up on Smith, and I was crying because Jackson thinks that Buff Ref is Bolt Ref.
I forgot about that.
And Smith Garrett retains with a back heel.
He did. Now, actually, last time we talked about this, we talked about Smith Garrett, and he said, made my return to the ring Saturday night at CWF Worldwide. We talked about how he was making his first return in like a month, and actually he did. He came back. And it says, hashtag Battlecade. What broken nose? All I see is the fact that I won, like I said I would. Hashtag just saying. So he came back after like a year's absence and got a broken nose in his first match. Sounds like he's not having too much luck. Ken Dixon I got an update for though. Ken Dixon had a match in the Ring of Honor dojo in January 2019. So it looks like he's training up there as well. I couldn't find any more information, unfortunately. But yeah, he's obviously making steps as well. Match 7. Brandon Day defeats Matt Tremont. Bobby Shields defeated Brandon Day at the previous event, and Matt Tremont was making his debut. Now, Brandon Day would go on to have a battle with Tim Donst throughout 2016 at Nova Pro, but we'll move on to Matt Tremont. So, that was a name I recognised straight away. I don't remember, Mason. Have you recognised that name or not?
Yeah, yes, he fought Maria Manic in H2O. A whole bunch.
So we watched... Oh, of course. So by that time, we'd already watched the documentary. Did you know... perhaps what I meant to say is then, did you know who Matt Tremont was before we started watching this Nova Pro thing?
Well, you also mentioned him with Jimmy Parker, too, but no.
So you didn't know him before this. All right. He's an American professional wrestler and promoter who currently works for Game Changer Wrestler, GCW. You know GCW, right? Okay, that's the one that actually had Orange Cassidy versus Nick Gage last weekend, which I still would love to see. I don't know how I'm going to do it. He's a former GCW World Heavyweight Championship for 294 days, and the Hardcore Hustle organization, where he is the promoter. HHO. H2O. That's what the H2O stands for. There's two H's and there's an O. Where he is the promoter. He previously worked with Combat Zone Wrestling, CZW, where he is the former World Heavyweight Champion there for 399 days, so for over a year. So obviously he's had some big titles in that type of organization. He is the only deathmatch wrestler to win all the American Deathmatch tournaments. He is referred to as the Grand Slam champion of deathmatch wrestling. Now, I know I could look through Wikipedia, I could pick out all these facts, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do justice to how big a person Matt Tremont is. Luckily, I was actually talking to Ryan from the Blade Job show that same day for a different reason, for a Good Cop, Bad Cop section I was recording. So, as I've heard him talk about Matt Tremont before, I asked him, I was like, hey, look, can you talk to us? So, what you're actually going to find at the end of this video, at the end of this podcast probably, I talked to Ryan for about 10 minutes about Matt Tremont. He actually knows him. He talks to him at different events. I thought he would give a far more personal account of Matt Tremont. We've had Ryan on before. He was on episode 13 of MGB, but I think he added a lot. I learned a lot just by talking to him and found out some personal stories that I wouldn't have known otherwise. Let me give you some of his matches then. May 2019, fans bring the weapons. Matt Tremont defeats Mance Warner. Mance Warner's been on MLW a lot. Is that why you're pointing at me?
And I wish I could have done like fans bring the weapons, because I really wanted to bring my old DVD player.
Weren't you there?
No, we were at Grandma's. Remember?
We were there.
No, we weren't.
I was there.
I wasn't.
Did I just watch it on TV then? I thought I saw it.
Because Zachary brought this big...
oh, we weren't there. We just watched it on TV live.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You're right.
And then Maddie brought something with thumbtacks inside.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she made like a piñata.
Yeah.
You're right. We missed it, didn't we? Yeah, because we were going to give something to somebody and then we just never got around to it. That match I talked about was the CZW Tournament of Death 18. That suggests there's a lot of CZW stuff you could watch, potentially, Mason. June 2009, the 200 Light Tubes Death. Alex Colon defeats Matt Tremont at H2O. Now, the reason I'm picking these two out, I said to you earlier, Matt Tremont said he was fighting his last match at CZW, right, against Dan O'Hare. That was 2018.
Oh.
He's just fought again in 2019. Oh. So I don't know what the deal is there, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk to Ryan. Did he know, did he come out of retirement? What was the deal? So anyway, we talked about that a little bit as well. The reason I mentioned the 200 Light Tubes Death, I'd never heard of this before until literally a few days before I bought a book for Jackson, which was Ripley's Believe It or Not, and they had the 200 light tubes match. I'd never heard of it. Zachary Shiloh knew who it was, and he told me who it was. It was a Japan organization.
Yeah.
So they do it over here as well. So I was like, oh, I know, Mason, you love light tubes. So I was like, that's really cool for you as well. It was BJP, Big Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, I started to research this because I thought this would be interesting for you, Mason. Would you like to hear some of the other matches that Big Japan Pro Wrestling puts together?
Yes.
All right, first of all then, we got the Circus Death Match. Above the ring is a scaffold, and under that scaffold there is a type of circus net made of barbed wire. You know, they normally have the trapeze net where they land on? That one's made of barbed wire. When a wrestler falls off the scaffold, the barbed wire spider net there is to catch, in inverted commas, the wrestlers. After a wrestler or a team of wrestlers have been thrown into the net, it is cut down and the match continues to a pinfall.
Oh my god.
I'm guessing you'd like to see one of those.
Yeah.
Alright, would you like to hear some more?
Yeah.
A piranha death match. Barbed wire boards are placed in the corners, and in the middle of the ring there is a tank full of piranhas. Ooh. To win, you must hold your opponent in the tank for 10 seconds.
Isn't piranhas like big fish that bite?
The fish that bite, they bite skin.
Please, not your face.
I would hope not, but, well, of course they don't necessarily... I don't know how quick it is. Now, anyone who tells me wrestling is fake, I'm listening to these first two and I'm thinking, that's pretty tough to stage something like that. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You put your head in a tank full of piranhas, you do not know what those piranhas are going to do. If you've got blood there, they sense like blood. So that could be real. And in a death match, you probably can have some blood there. I have no idea. Would you like to hear some more?
Yeah.
Scorpion death match. Similar to the piranha death match, how instead of barbed wire boards, there are 2 cacti, and instead of piranhas, there is a tank full of scorpions.
Oh.
Shall I keep going? This is the next one. I love this next one. Crocodile death match.
Oh no.
2 wrestlers compete in a non-specific death match. The loser of the match must then go on to wrestle a crocodile.
What? I would purposely lose. That would be fun.
I want to see that. This match has only been performed once. It was between Shadow WX and Mitsuru Matsunaga. That I was like, oh my gosh, you cannot stage a match with a crocodile. They're a wild animal. Like even trained crocodiles, you still got to be very, very careful with things like that.
So do you have to pin the crocodile?
I have no idea.
And like, I have another thing. So I got my phone and like they had a like this ad for TikTok, and this person was just hugging a lion. And the lion, it didn't do anything.
I've seen matches where the people have wrestled with lions, but they were like trained lions.
No, it was
and they
perfectly
didn't have
fine. They just
and stuff.
hugged, and it didn't. He actually hugged with.
They can be tame. They can be tame, but in general.
In a Ripley's Believe It or Not, this one girl actually has a lion as a pet, and it sleeps in her bed with her.
All right, I got 2 more if you want to hear them.
Yes.
All right, a Firestone death match. Both the inside and the outside of the ring are lined with electrified space heaters wrapped in barbed wire. The match is won by pinfall. I would not want to mess with an electric heater. Last one. The Big Japan... I'm not sure what this is. W***ing Crisis Big Born Death Match. It's also known as the Crisis Big Born Death Match. This is a Big Japan match which combines several different deathmatch types. The match starts out on a scaffold above a barbed wire net over ring, like the circus one. The ring itself is surrounded by cactus. We talked about that. Firestones, which are electric space heaters wrapped in barbed wire. We talked about that as well. And they're over the ring. And dry ice. Thumbtacks are scattered in the ring. In the middle of the ring is a tank of scorpions. Various weapons, including light bulbs, light tubes, baseball bats, drills, buzzsaws, and swords are permitted. The match is fought with all members of 2 teams active in the same time under hardcore street fight rules. When all the wrestlers have fallen into the barbed wire net, the next phase of the match begins. The barbed wire net is removed and the match still continues. Wrestlers leave and win the match by submission, by having their head put in the scorpion tank for 10 seconds or by passing out. I do not want my head in the scorpion tank for 10 seconds.
So, I would actually pass out. So, like...
Pretend to pass out?
Yeah.
So you're going to be eliminated? You could just not fight in the match at all, Mason. You do realise that. That would be probably easier.
I scratch about the H2O. Can we review this instead? Can I watch it?
I haven't looked for it yet. So we want to review the big... Is it peachy? From all the things I've just told you, what do you think?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Big Japan Pro Wrestling, I definitely want to know more about. That crocodile
I want
match,
to watch it.
that sounds absolutely insane. But, yeah, I thought that might appeal to you, which is... I had great fun researching this. It was just really funny how I'd never heard of it, and I didn't know it was Big Japan Pro Wrestling, but I saw that Light Tubes match, and I was like, oh my gosh! Zachary Shiloh, like I said, knew who it was, and then once I started researching Matt Tremont for recent matches, and that one came up again, I was like, oh my gosh! And that led into this is why I love doing these random Nova Pro reviews. Sometimes things just step out at you and present themselves to you.
So when I read it, I didn't think it was that extreme, but I knew it was extreme because I saw this person jumping off the top rope with light tubes on top of the person he's diving on, and there was light tubes taped onto all of the ropes, so you couldn't even go off the ropes. And are those the real light tubes?
I don't know. No idea.
Could you die?
I don't know. Probably. Anytime you could die potentially. Like if you scratched and it cut a bad artery or something, you could just bleed out. I'm sure they have medical people there to help you. But...
because Mom said that there was a boxer that recently died in the ring.
That's a little different. Boxing's a little different now.
So is that worse?
Like if you take a full-flank punch to the head. Now you still got to remember these aren't quote real matches.
They are?
So they're coordinated matches. No. Matt Tremont is a wrestler. He's not it's not like an MMA fighter or something. So they're still positioning themselves. So they're still trying to keep it relatively safe, or even in a very dangerous condition. So no, they're not trying to kill each other. It's not literally a death match. It's not like the gladiators in the old days. So you can try and keep things fairly safe, but I'm sure if something seriously happened, the match would stop, and then they would... You know how they touch the wrestlers, and the refs ask them something. So they'd have a similar thing in place for this as well, but it's just very, very dangerous. Like, Maria Manic talked about that. The look on people's faces when they think that, like, you're seriously, seriously hurt. And, yeah, you're hurting in a death match, but you're like, I can get through this.
Oh.
And then you can... Sometimes it looks worse than it is. Like, if you've ever had a cut before, sometimes the blood can just rush all down. And it's like, it's not... I don't even feel anything. Yeah. But it looks far worse.
I had that in SAC one time, like the daycare. Yeah. I just had this tiny little cut, and it was bleeding all over my arm, and I didn't really notice. Yeah. But one time I did bust my nose a whole bunch. It didn't hurt that much, but there was a whole bunch of blood all over the gym.
Yeah, if you don't do anything, it can look far worse than it is.
It was like a bloody nose, but like 50 times worse. It didn't really hurt, but it just looked super bad because there was like so much blood.
I will say for these matches, a lot of the wrestlers have like scars.
Yes.
So it's not like you're coming away with it. You are putting your body on the line for sure. You are getting hurt, physically hurt, more so than what a regular wrestler would do. But yeah, I'm guessing you don't wrestle as frequently as well.
I mean, like, didn't Paige have to retire? And she doesn't even fight death matches, stuff like that.
Everything is dangerous. I would say wrestling certainly isn't safe when you do that. Like if you land on your neck the wrong way or something like that, or your head, or a move doesn't quite go right.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a very dangerous sport for sure. Alright, let's move on to our last match, the main event, Match 8, a no-holds-barred match between Sonjay Dutt and Logan Easton Laroux. Last time out, in the PWI Ultra J title match, Ethan Case defeated Sonjay Dutt, and Chet Sterling defeated Logan Easton Laroux. So actually, both of these guys lost in the event 2, but you get to main event, the third event. The first event was Sonjay Dutt against Logan Easton Laroux, and actually Tim Donst was in there as well. So Sonjay Dutt's actually main eventing 3 events in a row here. Alright, go ahead, Mason.
This does not sound as good just talking about, like, Big Japan Pro Wrestling.
So you're telling me there's not going to be a Z4? We're just going to review Big Japan Pro Wrestling in the future. All right, come on, get on with it. Okay. You got to at least finish this one out, though, first.
So, Logan, he's in pink, and he has no sweater.
No, he didn't, yeah. I don't know. I didn't notice that from the previous 2. So it might just be this might be something he didn't do at that time, and I don't really remember, to be honest.
Dutt throws a trash can at Logan, and then Logan went headfirst into the chair rack 4 times. Uh-huh. And Dutt, he got low blowed with the belt, and then it rings.
The belt rings?
No, Logan hits it.
I got you.
He goes, shh. Uh-huh. And then it looks like he's about to hit him in the dingo with it, and then he just rings the bell. Uh-huh. And he did that in front of Sonjay's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like 5 or 6. She's
No,
not that
that
old.
kind of fitted in, because when we talked about this before, the first event we went to, we tried to get a shirt for you, but we didn't have kid sizes, and we didn't know at that time. Most wrestlers do not. And he said you can wear like an adult small, because he's like, my daughter, who was, I think he said younger than you, she like cuts the bottom off and she wears them a little bit long. So you would have been 9 when we first went to those events, or were you 10?
Yes, 9, because we started the podcast.
Oh, correct.
On like Valentine's Day-ish, and like my birthday was the January, so...
Yes. So you were 9 at the time, so that would make sense that she would have been 8. But then back it up a little bit, she would have been a little bit younger. So yeah, it kind of fitted in with what we knew.
Duh, you just said that we went to the first one in September.
Mm-hmm.
So that was way before. That was like a couple months before my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Nice math skills.
I mean, I thought like a couple's like...
Oh,
yeah,
using a couple in a general sense?
Yeah.
Like a few? All right.
Yeah, because I don't feel like doing math
right.
because I'm on summer.
All right, fair enough. All right.
So, Logan kicks Frankie. Oh, yeah, because they come out. Like, the back wrestlers come out because...
Oh, that's
and
right.
Frankie,
you see why I wanted to record last week now?
and
so
Isaiah.
it's still fresh in your memory and you don't have to wait. Yeah, you got it written down.
And I mean, it's super small because I didn't want to ruin a whole next page just for this, but... And then kicks Beau and Isaiah in the dingo. Then Logan pushed Buff Ref. Buff Ref pushed him back. Sonjay wins with a dive off the... top rope, and Logan gave Dutt a low blow. Then John Kermon helped out Dutt.
Now, my question to View from the Top Rope for this week. So this will be, by the time this comes out, they'll have already answered this. It'll have been like a month later. I think I might have warned you there might have been something a little bit non-PG on the episode of Raw this week. So it's the incident between Mike Kanellis has just won the 24/7 title. Maria Kanellis is outside. She's knocking on the door to let me in. And he's like, how do I know it's you? And she knocks on the door again. He's like, let me in right now, Mike Kanellis, or else I'm going to kick you in the... And we need a female equivalent for dingo. So we're not going to use the word that Maria Kanellis used, but that's my question to View from the Top Rope. What is the PG equivalent that Mason can use for dingo if we ever have the female equivalent mentioned on the podcast? Luckily, we're not reviewing Raw this week, but yeah, I don't know what the answer is to that one. The one they normally use on TV shows in England is front bottom, but I'm not quite sure what we're going to use for this one. So anyway, probably not the best way to finish a podcast, Mason. They probably should just edit all that out. Anything you wanted to add for this one?
I don't have one.
I know, because it doesn't normally come up, and it's not normally used on TV. I believe you're an expert on Matt Tremont.
I've met him quite a few times. He knows who I am.
Okay.
And we talk, frequently on Twitter. I haven't seen him in a while because ever since he started H2O, he hasn't been going to Beyond shows. Yeah. So I haven't seen him in, I think the last time I saw him was New Year's, maybe Rana last year. I'm trying to think. Whenever the barbed wire match with David Starr and Joey Janela, that's the last time I saw him. So I think that was New Year. I think you're right. I think because I was actually talking to Mason about that. He was asking me about which death matches had he seen, and I mentioned the David Starr match. Well, he thinks that they're death matches, and I was like, certainly they're more violent than what you see on WWE, but I wouldn't class it as a death match per se. Yeah, I wouldn't classify barbed wire match as a death match. It definitely is part of the death match formula. Sure. Where obviously they'll barbed wire matches, but then they kind of take it one step further. I usually categorize death matches when you get really over the top spots. Usually if there's glass involved, I automatically death match for me. Mm-hmm. And if you saw the 10th anniversary of Beyond with the skewer, the needles through the cheek, that's definitely death matchy. And they had forks attached to a shopping cart for some reason. Oh, wow. Now, the reason I'm asking you is I recognize the name. I recognize CZW. I recognize H2O. I didn't know he wrestled in GCW. I was wondering if you could give us any wonderful insight then about Matt Tremont that we can either
add your voice into the podcast, or anything that you could throw for us that will be interesting to our listeners?
I mean, Tremont is, in my opinion, the godfather of modern deathmatch wrestling. I mean, obviously, he was inspired by guys like Terry Funk and guys like Mick Foley and the kind of stuff they were doing in Japan and they were doing in ECW. Tremont has, for the most part, been a deathmatch wrestler the majority of his career. You can go and find matches where you've got a little baby-faced Matt Tremont, you know, going through light tubes, going through barbed wire boards, that kind of stuff. My biggest point of respect for him is you know, and I hate to maybe break kayfabe on him a little bit. He's a nice guy. He's just a he's soft-spoken. He's well-spoken. He's, you know, when you have that idea in your head, and it's an idea that I hate about what a deathmatch wrestler is, a lot of people think someone like Nick Gage, and he could be farthest from. I mean, he's a friendly guy, you know, I've never had a bad experience with him, and he respects the art of deathmatch wrestling enough where he created H2O. And he created his own promotion, and within a year, he also launched a sister promotion, no pun intended, WH2O, and is the Women of Hardcore Hustle organization. The matches that they put on are fantastic because it's not all just straight death match. There's a lot of really good wrestling happening at the same time. He runs his own wrestling academy, the H2O Wrestling Academy, while running 2 promotions. And they also, every Monday or Wednesday, I can't remember, blank on me, they actually do similar to what Beyond Wrestling does with their Discovery Gauntlet. They do up-and-comers, no-namers, just they give them a chance to wrestle, and then they release it on YouTube to hopefully get these individuals' names out there. A gentleman that I consider a friend by the name of Johnny Nova, who's from Pennsylvania, recently was featured on H2O's YouTube channel at an undiscovered event, and he does a lot for the business, you know, not just deathmatch. I mean, the guy cares. The guy definitely he loves the business more than a lot of people that I've come across. I think Tremont is probably my favorite guy who was never huge. You know, never Big Four, never, you know, WWE, ECW, WCW, TNA, Ring of Honor. You know, he's always just kind of done his own thing. And I think he also runs his own wrestling memorabilia store in New Jersey. So, I mean, the guy stays busy. The guy works, and he earns it, and he puts his body on the line for us. And Tremont is fantastic, in my opinion. Probably, like I said, my favorite wrestler who never got the chance to go to the big stages.
Sure. I thought I saw, because we actually when we reviewed episode 2, we actually mentioned somebody who, it was some quote on Twitter, and it said it was his last match in CZW. This was 2018. I went back and looked on like Cage Match or whatever for a list of events. It looks like he's still wrestling. It looked like there was like 6 events. I don't know if he's just on a much lower scale, or if he's focusing more on promoting. I don't know if you have any insight on that. Obviously, just looking at a website of a list of matches, you can't really tell anything.
Well, that's pretty much what happened. Is he wanted to spend more time. And once again, I feel bad, kind of like putting words in his mouth. But from what I understand, what I saw on Twitter and things like that, he wanted to kind of focus on his promotion. So he steps away from CCW. He did make a return though, and he kind of he doesn't show up as often at other shows anymore now that he runs H2O. Like I said, he was a mainstay at Beyond for a long time. I mean, I've seen him wrestle Matt Riddle. I've seen him wrestle. I've seen him wrestle Matt Riddle a couple of times. Which is, you know, you look at Matt Riddle in NXT, and you don't see him doing barbed wire matches, you know. but Tremont was that. Actually, I'll give you a funny story of Tremont when he was wrestling Riddle at Beyond. At one point, they had a barbed wire chair propped in the corner, and Tremont took the chair and hit the chair. He comes all the way out of the ring. He knocks both of my beers out of my hands, and his foot crushes my hand. Like, I actually had a legitimate boot print on my hand. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, there's a mixture of this is awesome, where's my beer, ow, my hand hurts, and I think he's blading under the ring right now. He comes up covered in blood, gets back in the ring, the match continues. I happen to mention, take a look at my hand to someone. And Mr. Denver, Colorado, from Beyond Wrestling, immediately comes over because he's thinking a fan got hurt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, man, I'm good. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm good. And I brought it up to Tremont at one point, and he was very apologetic. And I just said, look, man, I know the risk when you're at a show when there's no barricades. I mean, if someone comes flying out of the ring, you get out of the way, and I didn't get out of the way.
Yeah.
Simple, end of story. And
I would say that story is worth the price of a beer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've stopped drinking at this point, so I mean, if Tremont hears this, if he could buy me a Red Bull, I mean, that would be great. Love Red Bulls. But yeah, he was also for the David Starr, Joey Janela barbed wire match at Beyond Wrestling. He wasn't wrestling that night, but he was there, and he actually helped them set up the barbed wire.
Yeah,
something he's very familiar with. So I thought that was neat, and I actually have a picture somewhere. I think I posted it on Twitter at one point that just said, I want someone to look at me the way Matt Tremont looks at barbed wire. And he's just got this look on his face like he's proud of his work. Yeah, no, stand-up guy, great wrestler, really happy that he's doing so well. I think H2O is going to blow up. I think H2O is going to become the same level of CZW and GCW at one point, as time goes on.
Let me give you some insight on H2O. Obviously, Mason, he doesn't really understand the death. Even Mason knows who H2O is. So the fact that it's entered his consciousness without even watching those events tells you that it's becoming big. So, hey, I want to thank you for this. This was exactly what I thought. I knew this would be in your wheelhouse. I saw the name Matt Tremont. I knew it was way outside my comfort zone, as it were. I'm getting better on stuff like that, but I knew I wouldn't be able to come up with anything. But as we were talking to you anyway today, I thought it would be the perfect time to ask you about it. Hey, why don't you give us all your details about how to find you on Twitter, how to find a Blade Job show, and all that wonderful social media stuff.
So you can follow me and the show, because we are one and the same, at the Blade Job Show on Twitter. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/thebladejob. We're on YouTube, all the major podcasting apps. We're on Google, we're on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and you can pretty much usually just find us on Twitter starting fights because it's funny. And people like to take things way too seriously, and they just need to remember pro wrestling is supposed to be fun. So why don't we just enjoy it?
All right. Thank you so much. I know you're in your sickened state today, so we're going to let you go back to your bed. But once again, thank you so much, Ryan.
Of course. Anytime.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
The music was Zigzag by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. http://creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0/
You are listening to